Hey everybody, welcome to Train Tuesday. Not sure what that was, but thanks for joining us today. It is a rainy, soggy day here on May the 4th, 2021. And well, let's see who's out there. We've got a full house today. I've got Zach, Amy, Sean, D'Angelo, Chris, Southern New Mexico Rails, and Refuse Entertainment. We've got Chris Ward, Kevin, Frederick, Rails and Sirens of Southwestern Iowa, Texas Rail Fan. There's Ricky and Christian, Derek, Steve, Brady, Ted. Somebody said it was a holiday today. I don't know. And I don't know. Chris says, was that a Star Wars robot? I don't know what it was. I thought it was a trash can on its end, but I'm not sure what that was. I apologize for that. We were having some equipment failure here earlier, but I think the guys down in engineering got everything taken care of, so we should be all set. Maybe that thing was trying. Maybe that's why we were having trouble. Was that thing was in here? So, anyways, who else do we have here today? We've got Greg, and we've got Eugene. We got Anthony. Got a Texas Rail Fan. We've got Mark. We got guys coming in from all over the United States. Any of our Canadian friends out there, give us a shout out. We always want to see our Canadian friends up north, and likewise our friends down south of us, down in the warmer parts, which is probably warmer than what we're here. Welcome aboard. All right, so I think we got some great stuff here for you today. And, I hope you like EMD. EMD is going to be the topic of today's show. We've got some great stuff to show you. And we're going to talk about the SD60s. And we're going to talk about the GP40-2s. And one of my favorite paint schemes, we could call this the Train Tuesday of the Cat. So now I'm looking at my notes, and, I tried to get some really cool pictures for you, but I couldn't find any. I looked all over, and I mean, even with the SD60s, I couldn't find anything. And hold on a second, I got an idea. Obi Tony 1, you helped on Train Tuesdays in the past during the Genesis system. Please help us with pictures. You're our only hope. Jim. All right, it's worth a shot. I hit send. We'll see what happens. So anyways, we got Tony.
Hey,
you got my message.
I did. I was just about to watch my Betamax copy of Star Wars because of today's date, but if you've got some train stuff to discuss, I think I've seen this before, so.
Yeah. Oh, is that what May the 4th is?
Yeah, you're a Star Trek guy. I get it that you're not into that the same, or it doesn't mean the same. I would say that I'm as much a Battlestar Galactica person too. So, and we have no date either, but yeah. So Star Wars, yeah, it was got May the 4th.
Well, yeah, I think we had a little bit of fun with that, and of course we'll probably have some more fun with that because some of the stuff that we're going to talk about kind of falls in when that first movie came out. So, man, we got a full house here for you, Tony. We got a great crew on board, and yeah, let's start with the Genesis EMD SD60s. Now, remember we've done these in the past, but we're doing something a little bit different now. While I've got you here, I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to share the screen so everybody can see which SD60s we're going to do on this run.
There's so many different, the prototypes for that because it comes out, I think, in '84 with a Spartan cab, but we don't get, you guys just did the cool Triclops, which is the first wide cab versions. I think, no, actually maybe Canadian National might have gotten wide ones. There's so many different 60 variations, but tell us about this one. This is not the 3-window, but this is the 2-window,
yeah,
early 90s.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the SD60, which replaced the SD50, came out in 1984. And it actually ran into production in different variants right up until 1995. So it's a locomotive that had a great run. And through that time, it went through many iterations, like you said. When it originally came out in 1984, it was with the Spartan cab. Lines like the Sioux line had purchased a lot of those. And through the years, they went through some refinements. They went through some changes. And one of the biggest changes, one of the most noticeable changes, of course, was what some of the rail fans called the wide cab, but technically it's called the North American Safety Cab, based on the Canadian prototype. And Conrail was the first one to really step up to the plate and say, you know what? I think we're going to order some of those. So they ended up ordering 75 of these SD60Ms. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I wanted to talk about the two big customers first, which was Conrail, of course, and then Union Pacific ordered 281 of these. And the ones that we're doing in our release, we're including both the Conrail, the OG SD60M motors, if you will, and we're also doing the Union Pacific SD60Ms, and we're offering them in both the as delivered and the slightly newer. And then these other roads that we'll talk about, well, they're kind of from either Conrail or Union Pacific. So let's get started. I know you've got some familiarity with some of these roads, and I'm going to go ahead and blow this up so all of our fans can see. Let's see. We're starting off with the Buffalo and Pittsburgh. These are former Conrail units. Now, Tony, have you ever seen these guys?
I think we've got a guy here in the Kansas City area that I think that's his railroad, but I'm not sure. And I don't know if he's got SD60s on it. But yeah, I've never, of course, everybody knows the orange. It's the mini version of how UP's turning everything armor yellow, that the Genesee in Wyoming, that orange paint scheme is all over the place now too.
Yeah, same thing here. I mean, these were required by the Buffalo and Pittsburgh in 2020. So this is kind of a newer locomotive for them. These are based on the Conrail ones that they had. Now, these originally were former Conrail locomotives, so they're going to have some of those Conrail features, but they're also going to have some features from CSX, because, of course, you remember back in '99 when Conrail got split up between CSX and Norfolk Southern. They added their equipment, and in this case, there's a CSX-style antenna because of its time on CSX. So each one of these, even though it's a former Conrail unit and now it's a Buffalo and Pittsburgh, it's going to have little subtle details. And we know how the Genesee in Wyoming is. They're pretty much kind of like what you're saying, almost like the Borg, but that's the wrong sci-fi per se. They tend to buy what they have and they put it under a coat of orange and black and call it good. But
and these are brand new. This is, I think, what, in the last just year or two.
The last year, yeah.
What era? It's like now.
Exactly. And if you look carefully of course, with all of our Genesis locomotives, we're going to offer them with and without the sound, but we're offering 3 different road numbers for this, and there's subtle little details. If you look at 3887, it's going to have a black roof and forward ditch lights and a speed recorder and 5-chime horn, small GPS dome. Whereas 3889 and 3890, they have the white roof. That's the biggest difference. And then you'll see other little subtle details. And so those are the details that people ask for. And of course, that's what we're delivering with these. Now, one thing I wanted to let you guys know, these are Genesis. These are not Genesis 2. These are Genesis. So they're going to have the Genesis features, not quite as many lighting features as Genesis 2, but nonetheless, Genesis locomotives, and they present really well. And, what do you think, Tony? Do you like the Triclops better or the 2-window?
The Triclops is pretty neat, but yeah, this is what I kind of remember seeing a lot more of. So it seems like the more common, or when you think of a wide cab 60, this is what I think of more, is this 2-window. But both are pretty awesome looking. And still around today. I mean, you can still, this is, again, for something that goes back to, wow, it would now be 30 years? Because I think production ends in 95. So at least 25 years or so for all of these age-wise, but you still see them all the time.
Yeah, it's, You know, it's a testament. I mean, EMD has always had has pretty much had a really good background. They're known for their durable, rugged locomotives, not a lot of frills, and you know, a lot of guys. I've talked to folks that work on the BNSF, and they remember SD60Ms from the Cascade Green years, and you know, just like anything, you get some guys that have certain opinions of them, and opinions vary. But for the most part, most of the guys liked running these locomotives. They were solid locomotives, and as a testament to that, we're seeing them now in 2020 on new roads. So besides that, we got to go with the original. And here's what I remember. You know, growing up on the Northeast, seeing the coal trains and Conrail making its way into my neck of the woods. These are the SD60Ms I remember. Now, Tony, what about you? Do you remember Conrail Big Blue SD60Ms?
Certainly not that much in the Midwest, but you know, that is from just railfan, you know, looking at magazines and books and things, that, you know, the face with the big Conrail quality is one of those things that seems synonymous with those wide, because what they had, the SD60Is, which Athearn has done, and then this is the SD60M. So yeah, this is a prototype that very much is a kind of signature Conrail piece of equipment.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if you look at the offering that we're doing here, this is the 1993 order. These are as they appeared in 1993. So for the guys that have been asking Athearn to do something of the 1990s, and especially Conrail, I mean, Conrail has a diehard community. Here you go. This is 1993 built. Now, that safety cab that we talked about earlier, that North American safety cab, that was new for the SD60 in 1991. And Conrail, seeing that, they thought, you know what, this is a good idea. Let's go ahead and try this. Conrail at the time was being extremely successful. And here we have it. We've got 3 different versions of the as delivered out of the 75 order that they picked up. So really cool. And you know, the one thing that I always remember about these is the red marker lights.
I was about to say that seemed to be one of the features that always stood out on these, was the red, like class lights, but they're marker lights on front and back. Yeah, that's a neat feature.
It is a neat feature. Now, these on this particular run, they are non-operating. And the reason why we did that is because we wanted to leave that up to the modeler to do. They didn't always, for the most part, in the 90s, they were still pretty heavy on those marker lights. Once they got transferred into CSX and Norfolk Southern, sometimes they were plated over, sometimes they were painted over, and we know there's going to be some guys out there that want maybe a patch job. And so for this run, we elected not to have operating marker lights, but I'm sure it's easily achievable for the talented modeler out there.
And these are all, I know that Conrail quality look came into being, and I'm not sure without checking. I don't know if you know, but all 3 of these will be Conrail quality lettered. And was that typical for the 60Ms? Are certain orders
for this era? Yeah. I mean, this was their standard scheme that Conrail had adopted in the early 90s. And, you know, it's really interesting. Conrail in itself, you know, considering what it came from, it came from the ashes of Penn Central, literally, and also some other Northeast roads. And shortly, I mean, within 10 years, started becoming a profitable railroad. And so by the time the early 90s came about, they were one of the big guys. They were just as big as some of the bigger Western roads. And I remember, you know, looking at Railfan and Railroad magazine and seeing Big Blue covered quite often. And so that Conrail quality, I distinctly remember that coming out, and that was their standard scheme for that time, and especially this locomotive.
This really is kind of, as you say this, because Conrail, as it starts, sadly, on April Fool's Day, 1976, you know, it's kind of that, well, you know, Penn Central's been a disaster, and then they piled in like Erie, Lackawanna, and some other roads. It's like, this is never going to make it. And yet, yeah, by this time, Conrail is, you know, this, to me, Conrail has come into its own now and proven that, yeah, it's got staying power and became a success by this point. So this was a fun era for the railroad.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings back a lot of memories for me anyways. I remember when these were mainline power and they were brand new. And, for you and I, Tony, 93 isn't really all that long ago,
It
but
doesn't seem like it, but yeah.
it doesn't seem like it, but yeah, really cool. But we didn't stop there. We did more than just Conrail. Like I was saying earlier, in 99 when the big split happened, and I don't know about you, maybe I was in the minority. I was kind of sad to see Conrail go. Got split up between CSX and Norfolk Southern, and here you have it. You're going to have SD60Ms that go to either company, and they're going to get a corporate coat, as we see here in the YN3 scheme. Where I don't know if you've heard it called the Dark Future scheme or not. Have you, Tony?
I have heard that, yeah. And but yeah, I think YN3, Yellow Nose 3. But that darker blue I liked, and I think that's the blue that hangs around for the How Tomorrow Moves boxcar Herald, which I think I've heard stories that it's on its way out or maybe changing. But when they went to this blue, reminds me more of that enchantment blue of like B&O, C&O Heritage, and I like that.
Mark, to answer your question, and Tony, I think you've got the answer too. But yeah, it was actually the opposite. It was successful to the point where both railroads wanted a piece of the action, right, Tony?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no longer, this is something the government bailed out, and I think it had gone private, well before. But yeah, again, suddenly, of all crazy things, who would have wanted the Penn Central back in the mid-70s and its problems? But suddenly, both CSX and Norfolk Southern are like, hey, we want that. And it remember it split, and you kind of went with the heritage. Like N&W had roots at one time with the Pensy, and they started putting PRR reporting marks on those, and then CSX had NYC for New York Central, which and you still see some of that equipment today, and that's
you do, yeah, that's true. That is very true. So yeah, we've got the CSX version here, and obviously its lineage is Conrail, but it's in the YN3 paint scheme, and I'm with you, Tony. As much as I like the former paint scheme, the YN2, the Bright Future as they called it. I still kind of like this. To me, it kind of harkens back to the old B&O days, that dark blue with the goldish yellow. And I do remember when they came out with this paint scheme, probably around 2003, 4 or so. This was when DuPont came out with their Emron paint specifically for industrial. And so these locomotives, when they were new, they had a really nice gloss finish to them. And what they were trying to do at DuPont was to keep them from, fading out, because, to you or I, we look at the aesthetics of it, but to a railroad, painting is really a tool to keep the rust off from the locomotive and, keep it from getting in the maintenance line. So, and I think for the most part, I think it was a success. I'll have to see what, if we got any CSX employees out there that have different opinions of that, but, pretty eye-catching paint scheme.
Yeah, and as you say that, I don't remember those getting that. How kind of the BNSF orange will fade to kind of that salmony color. We were out. My assistant editor Shane Mason and I were out rail fanning this weekend, and as we went past Murray Yard in Kansas City, it was just like a whole streak of really faded BNSF. And you see a lot of UP that way, but yeah, these CSX units, I can't say I've seen a lot of pictures of them where like they kind of got that whitish or light, where they're fading out. So it did seem like it was a very durable paint scheme.
Yeah, it's a good paint scheme. I think it's simplified for maintenance reasons, of course. But the other thing too, if you're a CSX modeler, I mean, these are perfect for, this is based on what these units look like in 2007 on up. Now, CSX used these right up until about 2017. And they were sold off to a leasing company. So if you're modeling 2007 to 2017, that 10-year span, these are perfectly appropriate for your layout. And, it's kind of nice to see this North American earlier variant in this newer paint scheme. It's pretty cool.
It is neat. Hey, I noticed these have ditch lights. What's because ditch lights would have been standard basically by the time these were new locomotives. What's the operational situation on those? Because I know these are not Genesis 2.0, do the
right. Yeah, these do not alternate flash like you were. I think
but
that's what you're getting to. They do.
Yeah,
They
they are
do function.
illuminated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they do function, and in this case, they are the pilot mounted ditch lights versus the porch mounted.
Right.
Now, this one, you and I have talked about these, and I was really excited about these because I don't live too far from this railroad. And again, this is more of a 2020 era locomotive. And who does not like the Terminal Railroad Association paint scheme? I just think that's really eye-catching.
It is so amazing because now, when I was a little kid in the like early 70s, the terminal was little in-cab Alco switchers, drag and transfer runs around. And then in the last few years, you've seen like tunnel motors and then like these SD60s and then this flashy red and white. It's like, man, they seem like a real serious railroad now. Whereas as a kid, they were just the little switchers dragging things around the St. Louis area. But now this is really awesome. And these are 60 eyes, I believe, which means it has the isolate. Right. There's a seam around the cab. So this is slightly different in this run, tooling wise, at least with respect to the cab.
Yeah, what they did, what EMD did, and Conrail certainly took advantage of this, is the SD60i had an insulated cab. So it was literally a cab that was on a type of shock absorbing system, which, you know, if you're on something like a main line with welded rail, maybe not as big of a deal, but if I'm sure you have, and I know I have, been in the cab of a locomotive on the old jointed rail, and it's not as smooth as a Cadillac. And this was a way to keep the fatigue off the crews. So it was a safety feature more than anything. And yeah, you're absolutely right. And speaking of which, too, Tony, I think you had some pictures to share of the actual 4001 and 4002.
We do, and there are two of these, and they're ex-Conrail, because being a 60i, they'd have to be. Yeah, 4001 and 4002, and contributor to Model Railroad News, Jonah Hemingway, who we're lining up. He's going to do his first review for the magazine when these models come out. So how cool is that? This is somebody
that's pretty cool.
He's down in southern Missouri, but does a lot of rail fanning, and I asked him about pictures. And man, aren't these awesome? I love this. The red and white with like the silver trucks. I mean, this is a fantastic paint scheme. Really cool.
It really is. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this so everybody can just enjoy the picture here.
And these would all be, this is all in the St. Louis area. This again is Jonah Hemingway. This is some of his rail fan photography work. And this is the pair at work. And yeah, these are, I think this, again, it's so funny to think this was a road with just little switch engines, and now it's this big, serious looking railroad. But how awesome is that? And of course, the Athearn model is going to be correct for this post. It's a 60i, but I'm guessing, you know, the pilots and everything, whatever might have been altered for the terminal, will match up detail-wise on the Genesis HO models.
That's correct. Yeah, we're going to... fortunately, I mean, for some of us at Athearn, this is a real close railroad. So for the guys that work in Illinois, it's not far at all. Now, here's 4001 again. Looks like it's got some frames and a couple of auto racks there. Really nice photography. And these are all, again, you said in the St. Louis area, right?
Right, because that's, the only, being a typical term, it runs the east side on the Illinois side and over to Missouri.
And, the funny thing is I looked at their map just to kind of re-familiarize myself with it, and it's an impressive railroad. There's a lot of trackage for a terminal railroad. Here we are. It looks like the same train. It looks like we got some industrial district here. Really nice. It's neat really model. You can tell there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the one spur coming down and crawling around across the road there and such, and then the old brick building. I look at pictures like this, and I'm sure you do too, and think, man, that'd be a great thing on a layout, or that would make a great diorama. In fact, when I see pictures like this, a lot of times I'll send them to one of the guys on our team and say, here, we need to do a cover like this sometime. I really like this.
Yeah.
What models are available that we could put this together. But yeah, this is a neat shot, I think, the way it's lined up.
A really cool shot. Yeah, I mean, you've got so much going on there, but of course your eye just shifts to those bright red and white locomotives. I mean, really nicely done. And I think we've got one more.
there's a historical society if you want to learn more. It's and I should have had this lined up for us. But like Google Terminal Railroad Historical Society, they do a fantastic like soft cover book, more or less. It's not always terminal stuff, but St. Louis related railroading. And boy, more times than not, there's been things in it that I'm like, oh, this is a great article on whatever, and I pick it up. But I think it's Larry Thomas is one of the people behind that. And if you go to the St. Louis RPM, he's always there. But Google Terminal Railroad Association, if you're not from the Midwest or not from this area, thinking, well, what is this railroad? And you'll learn a lot of stuff, and they've got some great publications they've done.
That's great. Now, I think you had got a picture in here of 4002, the other one that we're doing. And yeah, there it is. Just an impressive looking locomotive and an impressive paint scheme. Really cool.
Those are going to really be sharp. It reminds me of, remember when we had my one guy Aaron on a month or two ago, and I forget the railroad now, up in Washington, that was red and white with big power like this. And
exactly.
Yeah, this is just, these are awesome. Even if you're not a fan, this is one of those, if you saw it sitting on a shelf, it's like, boy, that's a cool looking locomotive.
It really is. And, you know, you're doing a little bit of research, and I'm sure you've heard of Granite City, Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
But it was founded because of this railroad. So when you do your look for the Historical Society, do a little look on Granite City, Illinois. Really interesting how the connection, you know, the trains actually built a lot of the towns in our country, and Granite City is one of them. And yeah, that is great. So let me go back to our.
And it's awesome, you know, we saw the Genesee and Wyoming unit before the Buffalo pits, and that these are getting done. I mean, so often in the past, these would always be roads. It's like, well, look for decals, because that's going to be a custom paint job, because nobody will ever do that. And
exactly.
That's one thing I love about today's modeling is like, that might actually get done. And it's like, that's awesome. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to these. I know I'll definitely be picking up one of these.
Definitely a very cool. And like you said, in the past, 10, 20 years ago, if you wanted one of these, you bought whatever was available and you stripped them down and you bought decals and paint and you set to work. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Now you can actually work on your layout, which is great.
So see, now I have no excuses, because then I'm not working on my layout either. So it's like, what am I not getting done here? But I'm always running my trains. So yeah, I don't know. But that's the thing I got to get more serious on is building the train stuff. Oh, it looks like Jim tripped over his Wi-Fi, or R2 might have done it actually, that he may have disconnected him. But we'll see if he doesn't re-emerge here shortly. And we'll continue looking at the SD60s. I was trying to remember what the other railroads were in the bunch. We were looking at the terminal. Oh, of course, we've got one more road to go, and it's Union Pacific and UP both in there earlier, and then the later versions, which I don't know why I never caught this for years, but that red sill to the yellow sill for UP, I think that change happens in the last handful of years. And now that I'm more aware of that, I catch it all the time. But the 60s will also be out in Union Pacific paint. And the red sill has got just Union Pacific with a little tiny shield on its nose. And then the newer one has the zigzag to the paint up top. Yellow sill, but it's that more reflective, I think is what that is. It wraps around the unit, and then the Building America logo and the American flag on it, and then actually the winged herald up on the nose as well, which is an awesome look. So different versions there with 4 road numbers coming for those UP SD60 wide cabs, round out that group of those. And these are going to have Tsunami 2 sound. You know, Jim mentioned it's a Genesis. It's not a Genesis 2.0, but so this one without sound is got a 21-pin connector in it, and then it'll have DCC and Tsunami sound as an option. And it's interesting too, on both of these, the locomotives we're talking about today, the SD60 and the GP40-2s, as I was looking up information on these, production-wise, I was thinking that the 60 had a lot more examples than the Jeep 40-2, because I was thinking the Jeep 40-2 as you know, if not for Chessy, it basically wouldn't be on the map. And in a way, that is true that the bulk of them were C&O, B&O, Chessy system owned, that they have the bulk of the production. But both these are within one number of each other. Like the total production on the SD60s is like 1144, and then the G40-2 is 1143. And I didn't realize they were that close. I thought there were a heck of a lot more 60s than this, although maybe I'm just confusing with, because the 70s and the other things that came after, you know, were so much the same. Jim, did R2 knock the Wi-Fi out?
I thought, well, the last thing I remember is somebody said there were Klingons on the starboard bow. Yeah, no, those gremlins that we were talking about earlier in the broadcast, they snuck up again. And so apologize. And I mean, we were having a great show until that happened. So
as long as it's not Cylons, we're fine.
Well, yeah, those guys creeped me out when I was a kid. And I don't mean the reimagined ones. The original ones were scary.
I never watched that show. I've had more people. I know people that watched it all, but yeah, I'm a diehard. You know, Lauren Green, the ABC show from '78, even Galactica '80. I'll watch. One day I need to watch the new one, but yeah, it's anyway. I was just telling everybody about these while you were working with R2 to get back online here. About I had not caught that, you know, yellow reflective sill taken over for the red, and I think that's something in the last like 10 years. And now knowing that, I catch it all the time. That you know that's a change when I'm looking at pictures and things of UP power. And so you're doing 60s both what as delivered is the red, and then the newer is the flag.
Yeah, so 93, UP ordered their SD60Ms, and you can see 6317 right here. That's a example of one of those earlier units. Now, Union Pacific ordered, like I said earlier, 281 of these locomotives, and they were originally numbered 6080, 6365, 6317 for being that first order. And look at the subtle differences before we go on to the newer one. You have that red sill, and you'll hear UP modelers say, you know, red sill, yellow sill. That's one of the defining timepieces, if you will, on UP power. Now, you have the red sill, like we talked about. The number on the cab is about the same font, same style. But you have Union Pacific spelled out on the long hood, and you've got the standard red line between the harbor mist and the armor yellow. Pretty straightforward, and a paint scheme that they'd had for ever since they came out with diesels. I mean, with subtle differences. And then flash forward to 2018, and what do we see? It'd be simplistic to say it's the same paint scheme, because when you really look at it, it's not the same paint scheme.
It's a lot, you know, it's a lot flashier, and especially the nose. Man, that little Z scale UP Herald they were putting on the nose, not acceptable. No way. But yeah, those wings that's awesome. I think that's such a great thing when they brought that back. But it looks
definitely,
yeah.
It harkens back to the cowl units of the 40s and 50s. You know, it really does. And even the DDs had that. And then if you look at, you know, speaking of the DDA 40Xs, check out what they did on the long hood. You've got, you know, Old Glory and all of its glory on the side of the long hood. And if you look carefully, you got the Building America logo, which they used for quite a while, and the shield. The shield has returned on the long hood. And just a cool spotting feature. But here's something that is really cool, and I can kind of point it. Hopefully you guys can see it. But look at the lightning stripe here on the top of the long hood. What does that remind you of?
I always say that was like somebody at Chicago Northwestern. Every railroad got taken over. And my dad used to always joke, no, Missouri Pacific, Western Pacific, they all got their name. UP let them keep Pacific. And it's like, oh, you know, no. But so, yeah, I feel like Northwestern maybe got the best deal, that somebody like snuck in that zigzag from those late Northwestern units. So
I've heard rumors of such. Now, I've never heard anything substantiated from an employee or anything of that nature. But yes, I've heard the same thing, that it was a homage to the CNW paint scheme, and it's tastefully done. It's a really neat paint scheme.
it's subtle, but yeah, that it just works on those. They look good. And I noticed the ends are, I guess both of these have blanked out number boards, but the
Right.
one has the numbers are printed over the area where they would be, and then the newer one's got them below. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Standard practice on a lot of the modern class ones. And, you know, these eventually they were repainted, they were renumbered, and they were renumbered 2158, 2169, and then 2240 to 2520. And really neat that there's still, a lot of them are still out there. Now, UP has since sold off some of these SD60Ms, which probably means we're going to have some new releases in the future, is what I'm thinking.
Of secondhand owners. You know, the other interesting thing too, look at 6317, that as delivered firecracker antenna. There's nothing up
Yep.
there on the cab. But then looking at 2442, suddenly you've got the PTC array. There's so much detail on that now when you think about, and that's, to me, doesn't seem like that far back. But yeah,
No.
the as delivered 90s, yeah, there's nothing on the cab roof there. There's that grab iron above the number boards and a firecracker. It's like there's not a thing there, and now that's covered with stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing, you know, how much things can change even in a 10-year span. And this is neat. So, you know, like we did with this, like we were saying earlier in the program, you know, we kind of started with two original customers, the UP and the Conrail, and then we kind of went from there. And that's how it goes with these locomotives. It's like buying a used car at the dealership. You know, you buy a used car and then you sell it off to your neighbor or your son or your daughter, or, you know, it goes on and on and on. And it's no different for the SD60Ms. It's really cool. And I'm looking forward to these because, you know, to you and I, these are still considered modern.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And, you know, if you're looking for that stuff too, I think it's Don Strack's UtahRails.net. We talked about the UP paint schemes. I know he has a page on that, and if you're not really familiar, go looking for that, because it's amazing the minutia of, well, they dropped the black outlines for a short time in the 70s, and like then the we can handle it slogan, and the lettering is this tall on the sides of the units, and it changes. Because again, I think, as you said, you take UP as, oh, is that from the time they had F units and Jeep 7s to Gevos? It's like, yes and no. That there's a crazy amount of different changes to UP paint. So yeah, that Utah Rails website is awesome for learning and picking up some of that stuff.
yeah, definitely. Well, you know, barring any more interruptions from hostile aliens, either off-world or on-world, let's see what our next thing is. And we're going to start in the early 70s, all the way back to April 1972, when EMD introduced what would become probably one of the more important Jeeps that it would do, and that's the GP40-2. Let me go ahead and bring up the next set of PDFs that we're going to be releasing. And we're starting with the Seaboard system. And boy, you know, that's going back a ways.
And that's very uncommon. It's one of those you kind of have to stop and think, what's the mid 80s? And yet you think, well, wasn't CSX around then? And there's that odd, you know, both what the family lines, which was a similar paint scheme to this, existed from Seaboard Coastline and L&N coming together. And so they were family lines, and then you had Chessy system. And from the early 80s on, they were kind of getting together and forming that CSX stuff, and even some of the early CSX logos and things, I think, were already out. And yet the Seaboard system is what, maybe 8345 tops, and then that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very short-lived railroad.
Aaron, good question. Yes, we do. So like I was saying earlier, these came out in 1972, April 1972. Their production ran. You want to give a guess how late these ran into production, Tony?
I think they make it either Florida East Coast or somebody buys them as late as maybe 86.
Yeah, that's right. December of 1986, almost made it 87.
Yeah.
And so in railroad terms, you know, these are still modern locomotives. I mean, you see GP40-2s all the time, and they're it's funny because with a lot of the smaller railroads, they were mainline power, and with some of the larger railroads, they were everything from mainline to branch line. And nowadays, we see them for industrial work. They've kind of taken the place of some of the switchers. And so, yeah, to answer your question, you're still going to see these. So the good thing about this release is, depending on what road you model, we've got something from the 70s all the way up until present day, really. Yeah, like you said, now you shared some pictures of the Seaboard systems too, which I looked in my collection. I didn't have any, so I'm going to go pull.
I found a couple, and I need to do some more research because I noticed in the 3 numbers you're doing, you've got one that's a 1600. And let's see what pictures that I found. This is from the Kevin U. Daly's collection at White River Productions. And I found a couple, but I think they're in that 6,000. Yeah, 6,000. So I need to, we'll do a little more research when I get this written up. But there's basically a pretty new one. And that's 1983 in Richmond, Virginia. That's a Doug Boyd shot from Kevin's collection. But yeah, isn't that sharp looking? It's a neat scheme for being pretty much plain. Yeah.
The other thing too is, and it was really common with this line, is how they had both the nose-mounted headlight and the cab-mounted headlight.
Yes, the old Atlantic or Seaboard Airline and then Seaboard Coastline bought what I always said was the signature Irv Athern light in the nose. That Burlington, CB&Q had it, and Athern put it on all those like mid-60s tooled wide-body Jeeps, whether it was there or not for prototypes. So yeah, this I would call the Athern light package on the blue box on the nose.
So this looks like maybe an inspection team. These guys look too clean to be,
I thought
working on this.
Yeah, when I pulled the picture, I'm like, wow, white shirts and ties. It's like, come on. And yes, I don't know if this is, where do we put the decoder in here and how do we fit a speaker in here? I'm not sure what they're doing, but yeah. And none of these guys say railroad worker to me. So thank goodness that unit is that clean, because they're not dressed to be doing any work on a Jeep 40.
Yeah. This looks like this was a recently delivered from EMD, and they're just checking it all out. Because look at how nice and clean that prime mover is. Just
isn't that amazing? Yeah, that didn't stay that way long. Yeah, wow. And a fun look to see the, we don't think about it because you never see them, but you see the other side of the knuckle buster door things across the top there, and that the inside of the doors is, look at that. EMD painted the inside of the doors that nice gray color that you mold plastic in. Wasn't that nice of them? Because then it's type. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, it's undecorated inside.
Undecorated inside. There you go. Yeah, that's a neat shot.
Stage photo probably was. It could have been a publicity photo or something of that nature. You're probably right.
Jim Boyd. Right. Yeah, neat.
Yeah, and Jim Boyd, he had a knack of getting pictures like this pretty easily. So he knew a lot of people, and you're probably right. It was a stage photo. That's pretty cool. We've got some more that we'll share in a little bit. Let's go back to the PDF because we've got more than just that. We've got some really cool ones to show too. Let me see.
I was surprised at, if you're going to show the Mexican ones next, I didn't even know. Again, this is a testament to the length that where these have gone and how they're still around. But I think you called this like a cola can scheme or something.
Yeah, the cola paint scheme.
Didn't even know these. There's this and there's one other that both were, when I saw this for the first time, like, wow, that's cool. I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah, I mean, the further north we get, we don't usually get the opportunity to see these. But this, like you said, known from the rail fans as the cola scheme. And here you are, 2018. But it's like an old pickup truck. The thing just keeps running, and they're relatively maintenance, easy to work on type of locomotives, and not a lot of issues. And I know I've talked to some guys that have operated these, and they like them better than the 38-2s and some of the other early EMDs that came before them.
And so these were XFNM, and that's that light blue and orange Mexican.
That's right.
I think so. Yeah, is what they would have come in originally. I'll have to look through our stuff, see if I can find a little more history on where these started out. Because I guess it says it was XFNM, so I assume they really bought them, maybe original. Right. Yeah, that's intriguing.
Yeah, we're going to do 2 road numbers. And you know, with the details appropriate to that locomotive as it appeared in 2018, and then we've got some other south of the border. Check this out.
Equally impressive. Like I say, both these were, wow, what is this?
Now, this one's just being offered in one road number, but it's the same error as the ones previously. It's 2018. And yeah, really cool paint schemes. Makes me wish I could see these when I go rail fanning.
Exactly. Yeah, we see some Ferromex up here in Kansas City, but it's always, big 6-axle, power coming through on other trains. I've never seen little 4-axle units of theirs around here. So yeah, that is interesting. The other thing on these, because you've got a limited market for some of this, but I was talking with, I think, I'm trying to think now, somebody on custom painting, and he said, when I do home road things or I paint stuff, I don't start with undecorated because there's so many details on a modern locomotive that I pick something and then I basically patch it into what I want. And both of these schemes, that gray with like the burgundy band and then this one, both those immediately hit me of, wow, these would be something that you could either lift the lettering off or paint over that, and you've got this neat look at the white stripes on the pilots. I mean, this would be a neat if you suddenly wanted to, whatever your home road or a switcher for something, that this is a good canvas to start with, is you'd have this awesome paint job, and there's not a lot there that you wouldn't be able to change over and turn into something else. So if you look like, oh, I'd never buy this Mexican whatever road because I'm not interested, it's like, but have you got a home road or something? Because this might be a neat, project locomotive to do.
Yeah, you got some good points, and I mean that goes for even some of the big class ones. One of my favorite, it's actually my home road back east is New England Southern, and it's literally a Union Pacific paint scheme, but with their logo. So it gives you an opportunity to see. I don't model the UP or I don't model the BNSF, but we all know that these get sold and leased and things of that nature, and you can do something simple as cross out the original name and put your road name on there, or you can take it a step further like you said, and these are these GP40-2s, they are everywhere. So we've got a lot of guys that are excited, and I know what's coming up next, and our fans probably know what's coming up next, but Chessy is extremely popular. And so we had to do Chessy. We had so many people asking for Chessy. We had to bring the cat back. And here's our first offering. This is the original as delivered Chessy in the C&O paint scheme. And, Tony, you and I have talked about this before. I mean, but this was just a cool paint scheme, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, especially by this time in the 70s, as some of these mergers and other things happen, generally the look was plainer and very basic. And this Chessy livery was crazy when it hit in the early 70s. And the G40-2, of all the power that the railroad bought, between C&O, B&O, I think they have almost 300 of the 1,100 built. So essentially this, GP40-2 wouldn't be on the map without Chessy system. That this is the reason it exists. Now these, when I was looking for pictures on these, those dual mounted strobe lights on the side, and I don't know, I didn't, looking at our pictures, it does say the era is 1978 and later, but yeah, I had not, that was not on my radar. So as I kept pulling pictures, I'm like, no, it doesn't have those strobes. And then I started to find, the Rock pilots naturally were a standard issue thing, but these strobes came in later. And we do have some pictures of those to look at, but that's an interesting feature. So this is a slightly, I forget now, there was a lot of orders for these. So maybe they were delivered like this, but I'm thinking maybe they were not, and that was added later. So this is and I see this all new artwork provided by noted Chessy railroad experts, which then had me wondering, well, I got to look what's different, or what was, this must be a more exact or something this time.
Yeah, we did reach out to some you know, and Chessy modelers are very passionate about the road, as well as they should be. We had reached out to some experts, and one of the things too that bears repeating is we are still working on getting some of this artwork updated. There is a lot of detail to these locomotives, and they didn't quite make it to the print date, but we are actively working on getting that updated. So you might pick something out that doesn't look quite right. That's it. We're just trying to get that wrapped up in the next few days. So, but you're right. You know, 1978, a lot of these GP40-2s came from the factory in rather plain paint schemes. You know, they weren't anything too crazy. And then you've got Chessy, and I don't know about you, but you see Chessy, and you immediately think of the disco era of our time. It's just like this wild and crazy paint scheme. Really, really cool, and I'm glad to see the Chessy back. I mean, we do really love the Chessy system, and so we're doing the C&O version, and this one here, 4276, an interesting historical note too, and I didn't know this until recently. This was one of the first locomotives where they were using adhesive decals or stickers for the safety and warning placards that were throughout the locomotive. You know, in the old days, that was a stencil.
Right.
You know, they would put that on there with a stencil, and, you know, by 78, they're like, yeah, let's do this. This will probably work a little bit better.
Wow.
So we have to do the Baltimore and Ohio, of course, one of the three that made up the Chessy system. You know, one of the interesting things that I always liked about the Chessy system was I thought it was a great merger. You had the Baltimore and Ohio, you had the Chesapeake and Ohio, and you had the Western Maryland. You had those three railroads combined. And for you 80s fans out there, it was almost like Voltron. They all came together, and you had the I believe, if memory serves me correctly, after talking to a B&O fan over the weekend, you've got the B&O yellow, you've got the vermilion from the Western Maryland, and you've got the Chesapeake and Ohio blue. And they just worked together so well. It was just a true merger of colors. I think everything about it was just really, really good. And I know, didn't your publication just recently do an issue on the Chessy?
The one that should be arriving, I actually got mine in the mail today, which was a little bit early, but right on time, is our, let me see if it's June or July. Should be June. June 2021 is
okay.
CSX and Chessy and B&O. And I've got like an evolution of CSX paint schemes on one page. It shows the different things. So if you're looking for more on Chessy, CSX, all of that, modelrailroadnews.com, and you can find out. That's our June 2021 issue.
So yeah, if you're a Chessy fan, you're going to want to check that issue out. If you're not a subscriber, definitely sign up for that, because that is everything that they did as far as a company, corporate-wise. They did so well. It was so well thought out. Everything from the silhouette of the original Chesapeake and Ohio logo that looks like a C, naturally looks like a C, you know, that cool font that they used and everything else. All that was planned, and it seems like, you know, with the modern stuff, it's more utilitarian. You know, it's, it's pretty much, oh, okay, they're merged. It's let's paint it black and move on. So definitely, I know you Chessy fans out there are excited, and you're going to want to get on board for this. Now, remember, everything that we're talking about today, you have until the end of the month, the last Friday of the month, to pre-order these through your favorite dealer. Now, unfortunately, you know, to all good things, see, there's another reference, but wrong sci-fi. But all good things must come to an end. Now, if you're a CSX fan, especially a early CSX fan, we've got an offer for you that I think you're going to like. And this is 1980s. This is late 1980s. And think about it too. You know, these were still relatively new when CSX came into existence. So why repaint the whole locomotive when you just need to change the numbering system? And
yeah, this was very common. Yeah, I think that all these GP40-2s, I think for the Chessy, these are all phase 2. So they're not going to be any older than like 77, 78 delivery from EMD. So again, by the mid 80s, as they were doing this, they patched them. And, you know, it's interesting. I think the color there below the B&O, that you're using for that patch area.
Mm-hmm.
I think way back I used to always think that was just like the faded Chessy, but I assume that's really the CSX yellow because they've painted over that. But as you'd see the Chessy was fading enough at the time that I remember rail fanning and seeing these kind of units in the late 80s, early 90s. And I always just took that as being just badly faded. But I think that really is CSX yellow painted across that area. Then the patch road numbers are on there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. There's also a tan that CSX used too. So I always wondered if it was that tan color that they painted on certain things. Now, like these and some previous ones, you've got some pictures that I'll bring up here. I'm going to go ahead and remove this screen and show what you have for us. You've got some Chessy, and then you've got some former Chessy.
I've got a little, I think I have CNO, BNO, and then some of the CSX lettered ones that are all in the neighborhood of what you're doing. Again, they had so many, they were the biggest buyer of the Jeep40-2s that it was a bit of a challenge to find the exact numbers. But this, shows you this is a phase 2, so you've got that extended dynamic brake that comes up to the air intake. You've got the protruding like paper filters back there on the radiator, the anti-climber on the front pilot. Now she's got the signature rock pilot there at the bottom of the pilot. And if you notice too, and Rio Grande did this, I assume they were trade-ins, they didn't buy the Blomberg M with the shock absorber that the Chessy 40s have, what I would just call straight or standard Blomberg trucks. And I know Rio Grande did that as well. So you'll have that on your model. But this is one of the B&Os with the dual strobes was a challenging thing to find on some of those. But there's one of those. And that's in Ohio. This is on the D&H. In 1988, this is a John Gould photo and from Kevin Udaley's collection. Man, look at that second unit is an Alco Century.
Yeah.
And then our first unit. Now this has got, it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you can zoom in, but under the B&O is the CSXT reporting marks are present there above the 6111. So this matches that design. And you can kind of see that patch on the door there around the number that is kind of a different color of paint that's been put on that.
An interesting photo because like you said, you've got that former D&H behind it. Alco, and then if you look in the back here,
look at that! I hadn't seen that, Jim.
Yeah, the tank train.
Yeah, wow, that's cool.
If you're one of the folks that pre-ordered the tank train, either the Genesis and the N scale ones, we don't have any Chessy and N for you this month, but yeah, there you go. You've got a little bit of everything. So if you ordered the tank train last month, you're all set. You can go ahead and order the Chessy too. Cool picture. Now this is definitely a Chessy picture, and looking like we're in the coal fields here.
This is Raleigh, West Virginia. It's spring of 1989. So CSX has been painting stuff since what, 85-6, something like that.
Yeah.
So definitely these cats are beginning to look a little mangy. And boy, that poor Seaboard, that poor Seaboard unit has survived family line, Seaboard system, and is still showing its original as delivered. So yeah, these are some veterans for sure, all 4-axle Jeeps. But this is a B&O with CSX, the reporting marks. And I'd heard when we put together that CSX issue, I've got in the back, I think from the archive, I show that original CSX logo where they wrapped the CSX together. Which they never used on anything, but there's that original CSX. And I go through the reporting mark stuff because I never knew that they tried 2 or 3 things, but they were taken as they were trying to come up with. And then when they did settle on CSX, X at the end denotes a lease fleet. So there's why the T comes in CSX, which again are things, it's like, that would be. Otherwise it'd be like GATX. And it's like, no, they're not leasers. So in kind of that nomenclature, they added the T for transportation. But there's a neat little history thing there in the back where I kind of go through how it developed its reporting marks and what some of the stuff was, because it was a surprise to me. So I thought it'd be fun to share. And this has got the late, and I assume you guys are doing this too, the late. You notice that one had the like loop, the upturned loop, coupler cut lever, and then this next picture
Oh yeah.
has the squares, which these would have been, these are late enough being phase twos. That's how they always were. That wouldn't have been changed. And actually, the other signature feature that you guys do to the left of 6149, that's not a stripe, as you know, that's that cut so you can look in at the batteries or the mailbox slot. And that's unique to those. And then what Rio Grande got SD50s bought at the end of a Chessy order that they got those just by the way, that they didn't change it. But that's kind of a Chessy feature. And again, this is a phase two with radiator screens there that are kind of sticking out in the extended dynamics and then the anti-climber. Rough looking unit, but I think now, isn't your CSX a prime for grime? Have we gotten to that one yet?
Yeah, that one's the first one that we show is a prime for grime. So it's going to be a little bit faded. They're going to be, it's not going to have the rust spots per se. We're going to leave that up to the modeler. But these are be great pictures for, you folks that are doing early CSX to help you with the weathering. I mean, look at the nose of this, and I'm still amazed too. We got a seaboard system right behind it in relatively decent shape.
Yeah. And boy, they did. Those seemed to really hang around. That, like, there was a couple of B&O units that survived, I think, all the way into CSX days, but it seemed like seaboard stuff I can remember seeing forever. And you'd think again, there's a black seaboard unit, and it made it through all the gray era of family lines and whatnot. So yeah, that is interesting. That shot's 1990.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
almost amazing. That's 1990, and look at that entire consist. There's nothing painted CSX.
No, they were a little bit slower to paint their stuff than some other lines, but that's really cool. We'll go ahead and go through the rest of these, and then I know some of you guys are itching to do some rail fanning and some got some questions for Tony and I, so we'll go through these next ones real quick, and then we'll have a little bit of news, and then get on to the virtual rail fanning. So let me bring this back up again where we left off. And yeah, I'm really excited about the Chessy. It was gone before I could really appreciate it. But yeah, you're right. This is the prime for grime. So it's going to be a little bit more faded out. And then the other ones that we're offering, some more CSX patched. Now, remember you were talking about the CSX-T earlier. If you look carefully here, you'll see that's the reporting mark. Let's try to zoom in on that.
I always thought this was interesting in that, because when Chessy system came around, as you mentioned, they kept all the, they had B&O, C&O, WM on the side. So there is no, because occasionally when I'm scanning or working on slides, everybody puts like on the slide mount, like N and W, whatever the number. I'll see CS put in. It's like there, and I always mark. It's like, no, there's no CS. There's no Chessy system reporting mark like that. That it's B&O, C&O or whatever. But when CSX hit, they did fold it all together and wiped out all those other partner roads. And now, prime for grime, there's two prime for grime then? Are both the CSX?
Well, there's actually three. There's a 2 here, and then the one that we showed earlier, the B&O with just the road number put on here. The second 2 will actually be an actual patch job.
Those will be neat looking. I love those prime for grime models.
Now, remember these? I do. Indeed, I remember seeing these up in Vermont and upstate New Hampshire. And, when I was younger, down where I lived, everything was a Spartan cab. These North American safety cabs were purely Canadian back then. And I always liked the zebra paint scheme that they had, the Canadian National Zebra scheme. We're going to be doing these in 3 different road numbers. And these are perfect for the guys that have been asking the 1990s. Here you are. These are square into the 1990s. Really cool locomotive. And these were originally built in 74.
This was the second, I think, and Canadian National is the designer. They came up with everything is there for a reason. Like if you notice, why is the door not flush on the nose? It's a separate piece. It's a safety thing. So if it gets bashed into, it doesn't come open or whatever, that it's wider than the opening. It's a whole safety thing they designed this cab, and then GMD built these Jeep40s for them. And then Montreal Locomotive Works did M420s, which got out just ahead of these. But it was interesting because for really a first time, while there's some subtle differences, you'd never look at a U-boat or a Jeep and confuse the two. And yet when these hit, because CN basically dictated this is what we want the front end to look like, that you had to start looking at the back end of these locomotives, because they all kind of shared this front end look. But a really interesting thing, and some of these are still around. We saw a pair of gray KCS painted units because KCS picked up some of these, and we saw those just this past weekend running around Kansas City. And lots of different stuff because it's Canadian. Look at the back end.
Yeah,
they just got that one Cyclops eye on the back instead of the two twin seal beams. This is a really neat, and of course the bell hanging over the front there between the number boards. I mean, yeah, just says Canadian. And that zebra paint is also, I think the M420s are the first new power to carry the zebra stripes, which I thought it was older than that. I thought it was more.
I thought so too, but
I think I remember reading that there's a couple of great books on CN motive power that the CN Historical Society put out. There are a couple of hardback books, one on first generation and later. And if you're a Midwest guy like me or you, that's like, yeah, I know, but I don't know that much about them. Both these books are awesome to get, because suddenly you'll go from, I don't know what that is, it's just some Canadian thing, to, oh yeah, I know what that is, I can tell you.
Yeah, definitely cool. So we did some other fun ones with the two L's. Check these out.
Oh,
Indiana
cool.
Harbor Belt. Now these are recent. These are 2020. Indiana Harbor Belt got theirs in 2020. Now I do have a disclaimer for the guys out there that are hardcore Indiana Harbor Belt. We wanted to offer these to you because even though there's some subtle differences that our model does not include, we felt that in the hands of a skilled modeler, they can adapt it to look closer to the prototype. And some guys might not even care. They just wanted to see a really cool paint scheme, or they really wanted an Indiana Harbor Belt. So either way, we felt it would be best to go ahead and offer this. And I mean, that's a really cool paint scheme as well.
That is a cool scheme. And it like Terminal, what Indiana Harbor Belt is kind of a short line. It's not, I mean, I don't think it's really a regional. I always thought of it as kind of a terminal railroad in the Chicago area, right?
Yeah. And it's one of those things too, where we've had feedback from our fans. It's like, why haven't you done this one? And we can reply and say, well, there's a detail here that we don't have, or there's something that's not quite right, and they still want it, and they're willing to, update it to their standards. And so that's why we went ahead and we offered this particular locomotive, and some just real easy details. Now here's one probably very close to me.
Oh yeah, definitely.
TP&W in the Rail America scheme. We're talking early 2000s with this one.
Yeah.
Very common locomotive.
And I like this scheme. I'm not a fan of the Genesee and Wyoming orange, which is odd because I like Illinois Central Gulf, so I should be an orange person. But of the short line operators that are all over the place that you see again and again, like Genesee and this one, I like this Rail America scheme is a neat scheme. And yeah, if you go up to Peoria now, this is what everything is dressed in, is Rail America with TP&W on the side.
Yeah. And it's a catchy paint scheme. I remember many years in the early 2000s of going up to Galesburg and seeing these on the Peoria main occasionally. So it's a very common locomotive, and it's another one that I think will do well for our folks in the Midwest. And if you've got some connections to this railroad, you're definitely going to want to pick one up. So yeah, so we had a pretty full plate today of trains.
It is, and those are neat prototypes. And I think you were working with technical difficulties. So I don't know if you heard this part, but when you were gone, Between those two, the Jeep40-2 and the SD60, which locomotive do you think more were built?
Which more were built?
Yeah, which was bigger and wanted by a lot?
Well, I would, if I was going to go by quantity, I would probably, my first assumption would be the GP40-2, since they were built from 72 to almost 1987. But the more I think about it, I'm gonna put my guess on the SD60M.
If the Wikipedia thing I've dug up today looks right, they're within one of each other. There's 1,144 SD60s, 1,143 Jeep40-2s, and I would have never guessed that they're basically the same production numbers. Like, wow. So
that's amazing how that.
Subject to that being correct, and I don't know if they took in all the different things, but in just looking at information, it was like, wow, I would have never thought those two were almost identical as far as the number made.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I'll put Zach Malcolm's comment up here because he's saying the same thing. Used to see the TP&W ones on their run-through trains on the BSF in Galesburg back then. Yes, you did, because I've probably got pictures of it somewhere back in the early 2000s, and that little line's changed a little bit.
Oh, definitely,
yeah. You know, we were talking earlier about stuff that's coming out soon, and one of the things that we're going to be talking about is the GP18s will be out soon, and I have some samples that got here just ahead of the ones that you guys out there maybe pre-ordered, and I thought, you know what, there's a Fremo event this weekend, and I'm going to have my end track set up there, so why not bring a couple of those GP18s, and eventually you're going to see some video we got. In fact, Ricky, if you're still out there, thank you for the video. He shot some great video of Burlington Northern 1996 running across the layout. And the Fremo guys, if you've not been to a Fremo event, you really owe it to yourself to go check one out. It's a really cool concept. We've talked about it in the past. It's like a domino setup. So it's a modular setup, and anybody from across the country and Canada can hook up and make a giant layout, if you will, and they operate it throughout the weekend. And so Friday, right after our broadcast on Friday, I jumped in the Railfan Jeep, and no further did I get down the road. This is the Clinton branch.
Oh, wow.
Caught Illinois Central, the SD60 Spartan cab, 10:35, making a local run between Gibson City and Clinton, Illinois. And look at that, still in the Death Star scheme. It looks great.
That is surprising. Yeah, I'm always surprised when I see a picture like this and realize, oh, it's now? That I would have thought most of them are all painted out. Yeah, but they're not. They're still
it was funny because, you know, my Jeep had just crossed. You can see the crossing gates there behind it. And that's Highway 54 in the background. So I crossed 54 on those tracks. And I, you know, as a modeler, as a railroad enthusiast, you always kind of do the whole, you want to see if there's ditch lights, you know, and I just happened to see ditch lights at 10:35. So I stopped right beside this old FS spur. And apparently he was appreciative of rail fans because he gave me a nice little honk and a wave as he went by. And it's just cool to see the Illinois Central, you know, like this in 2021.
Yeah, because now there's a heritage unit that they've painted, and yet they still have regular ones running around.
That's right. Yeah. So they still have a icy Death Star. Now, see, there you go. I think I just got something into with Star Wars.
There you go. Yeah.
Here's the Fremo event. Now, this was in McLean County. It was sponsored by McLean Depot up in McLean, Illinois. And we had a great turnout. We had folks as far away as Oklahoma, Nebraska, even New York. And you can see how they build all these modules and they link together, and they are operating all weekend. And if you look in the center there, you'll see some of the young folks from college, from the Fighting Illini, if you will. You can probably tell he's got some blue and orange on there. They've got a club out there at the U of I. Yeah. And got to talk to them a little bit. They were out there operating. but Ricky is a good man. He's a CB&Q fan, and he also does some BN. So we let 1996 do some revenue service on his run. And like I said, we'll be posting Train Tuesday. But if you have been waiting for the GP18s, they're going to be here in June, and that's going to be here before you know it.
Indeed, it will be. Yeah. And what McLean is like around Bloomington Normal, is that right?
If I'm a little bit south. Yeah, it's a little bit south of Bloomington Normal, and it's right on the old Route 66.
Ah, so, classic. Yeah.
It's a classic area, and there's a current Burlington. Or sorry, I've got Burlington Northern on the brain. There's a UP line that goes right by the school where this is set up. So, really a lot of fun. A lot of guys showed up for this. You can't see the end track layout because I'm actually in the end track pit, if you will, taking the picture with my cell phone. But great shot. We had some great time with these guys, and it's a lot of fun. If you're into operations, you definitely might want to look into the Fremo thing. And these guys set up twice a year, Tony. They set up in the fall, and they set up in the spring. So I'll definitely be back. So, well, I think we've got time for some questions and to do some railfan. Now, I don't know if you've heard about the Train Tuesday curse or not. Have you?
I've seen it. I've seen it in action. That you have an ability to scare the trains away. Apparently.
I mean, let's see. I thought, you know what? One of the busiest places that I've been to on the virtual railfan tour is Kansas City, Missouri. And I figured, since we've got you, Tony, we'll pay a little homage. So maybe this is just my way of blaming you if things don't turn out right.
It goes wrong, but
we'll have to see.
It could be. No guarantees, but yeah, let's see.
No guarantees, but drum roll, please, as we go to Kansas City and see if there's anything running right now. And then you guys out there in Facebook land and YouTube land, get ready for some questions while we bring up the busy area of Kansas City, Missouri. And we don't have anything. Even the rail fans left. There were rail fans here earlier.
Oh, yeah, usually there's some people hanging around down there.
Well, it usually is. Well, we'll widen the screen and maybe we'll get somebody to do a train dance, and maybe that'll work. But until then, if you guys, Kevin says, Jim, don't blame. Well, I couldn't think of anything else to do except blame.
I've had this happen before, though. This is just west of Union Station, and I've had people in town before, and I've taken them to Union Station at a railfan, and yeah, it's a busy place, and there's nothing. And then suddenly my assistant editor, Shane, will show up, and there's trains everywhere. And it's like,
right,
what happened? And he goes, oh, I had them all wait until I got here. I didn't want to miss anything. So I think he has some abilities not shared with me.
Nick, I think you're excited, and you don't have to wait too much longer. If you pre-ordered one of those P42s, you don't have much longer to wait, and they are pretty. I took one of those to the Fremo event this past weekend, too. And what can I say? Beautiful locomotives. They sound amazing. If you get the DCC with sound, they sound absolutely amazing. And yeah, definitely. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be looking for that. So what do we got for questions here today? Looking
Genesis,
through the comments, and if you got a question,
goes to Genesis this time, right? That's the really big news here. Is that P42?
That's the big news. They're Genesis, yeah.
Genesis, yeah. So I'm very eager to see what. As I remember way back when it was announced, and you talked about the things that were being done. So yeah, I'm eager to see that myself. That'll be a fun. And actually, I've got older samples that we'll put in Model Railroad News next to it, so you can see what's been done and how it's better.
Yeah. Yes, we will. Not today. We will talk about that next week. You see how much time we took talking about the 40-2s and the 60Ms. So we didn't want to tax you guys too much. But next week we will be talking about the 484, and we've got some other cool stuff. Tony and I have been working together, And we've got some other stuff, cool things lined up for you guys. So definitely stay tuned. Well, I'm looking in the comments section and the question comments and all those other good things, and I'm trying to find one that. And if you've got a question for Tony, by all means, feel free to ask him. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Scott, he says, ETA on the IC GP18s. Long live the green diamond. Oh, yeah, that was a cool paint scheme. Well, Scott, you don't have long to wait either. They will be here in June. That is something that I'm looking forward to because I'm in Illinois Central Territory, obviously. But look for those in June. They will be here in June. If you pre-ordered those, your dealer will be calling you soon. If you did not, and you still want to partake of those GP18s, I would be calling your dealer now and locking those in. I sold a B&O GP18 the other day to an N-scale guy.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, but he's a big Baltimore and Ohio fan, so that's probably why.
Almost refrigerators to Eskimos there. You sold an N-scale guy an HO locomotive. How about that?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. So he's excited. He's going to get his GP18 in just a few weeks. And, yep, definitely. So let's see.
That's the first time that we've moved from Jeep 7.9s to 18s in the Genesis line. So it's a first of its kind for that catalog.
That's true. That is very true. Let's see. Looking into the other UP GP40-2s would go nice on my layout. Yeah, I'm sure they are. We've done those before. We wanted to give some other roads a little bit of play time. And I mean, the 40-2, I mean, like we were saying earlier, it was around for so long that we had all kinds of different versions that we can do. And it's so not this run, maybe in a future run, but stay tuned for that.
You know, it's an odd prototype in a way if you think about it, because by the late 70s, I think EMD had their eye on replacing it. You know, they had the Jeep 40X test beds, which you guys make in the ready to roll line. I love that with the flared radiators. Then the production models, the Jeep 50 that comes out in 1980. And I think really in EMD's mind, we're done. But the 50, what was it? Was it the 710 prime mover? There was something in the 50 that the railroads didn't really embrace as well. So really it was almost kind of that, well, it's like Ford with the Panther platform, Crown Vics and the Lincoln Town cars. I don't think they ever meant for that Panther to run from the late 70s to just a few years ago. But it's like, no, people just kept buying them and wanting them. And that 40 was the same way. I think it ended up getting about double its lifespan, because the 50 never clicked with everybody like they had hoped.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, Brad's got a comment/question I'll throw up here. And it looks like we might have one of our developers watching as well. So we'll put a bug in his ear. How much longer until CN GP9M RMs, and they would go great with the GP40-2Ls and, of course, the GP38-2Ws on local freight? Well, Brad, if you have not yet already, go ahead and go to our product suggestion email and shoot us a request, because we are actively looking for what you guys want, and you never know. We might be sitting here on a Train Tuesday talking about those in the future.
That's such an open. There's so many of those early Jeeps when I think about it. You know, you've done like the Topeka cab. But there's so many big rebuilding programs and other things that, boy, there still is a wealth. When you think, oh, they've done a lot of Jeep 7s, 9s, you know, what else is there to do? Oh, you open the rebuild library up, and there's a crazy amount. And yeah, those CNs would be an interesting piece that you kind of have the foundation for with that Genesis tooling. So I'm sure we'll probably see it one day.
Yeah, that is true. Let's see. Yep, Nick has got the email up there. He says Athearn-product suggestions at athearn.com, and that's true. Go ahead. If you can't remember that, go to our website, go to the contact us, and you'll see that email, and there we are.
So it looks like we've got at least maybe 1 or 2 units sheepishly trying to make an appearance over there, coming out of the
Yeah,
BNSF, yeah,
yeah, I see a
maybe,
little bit of light there.
yeah.
It could be. It could happen. It might happen.
We'll
We'll see.
see.
But we're running long on time, so we might
Oh
not see
yeah,
it.
that's the thing. We get started, and it's like I there's lost time on these shows. We get to talking about train stuff, and suddenly it's like, wait a minute, wow, really?
Yeah. How many parsecs did we use?
I don't know, but it was a lot. Yeah, star date, whatever, when we started to now.
Yeah, we did the Kessel run in no time today. Wow. I'm looking through and seeing what else we've got here today.
Did you
We've
see
got
any? Did you get to see any Amtrak this weekend? Because Amtrak's 50th anniversary was
sure.
Saturday, and you would have been on the line of like the Texas Eagle and the Chicago St. Louis trains.
Yeah, I didn't see any full scale because I was in that gymnasium for most of the
Yeah.
weekend. But what I did see is I saw a really cool Athearn N scale big boy run on the N track layout, and those things sold out. They are gone. I tried to order one as an employee, and nope, they are gone. So if you guys out there pre-ordered one, you N scale guys, consider yourself lucky because that was one of those releases that once they came into the DC, which is our distribution center, they went right out the next day. And so that's always a good excuse. If you guys like anything that we talked about today, get to your dealer before the end of the month, pre-order those. I know I'm going to have to do that with that Chessy stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, the big boy was tough. I was lucky. We got one from Lombard Hobbies. They're in the Chicago area, and so my sister and Edgar, we've got the Excursion 4014 in that beautiful shiny finish, and it's a fantastic model. That's it'll be here before you know it, but that I think is our September cover. Is Big Boys.
Yeah, that's right. You've got something going on with that, Zach. Yeah, I did actually. There was one guy doing 2-rail O. O's not as popular as it used to be. HO is the king right now, and that was definitely true this past weekend. I would say probably 95% or greater was HO over the weekend. And again, this was just a enthusiast meet. It wasn't open to the public, and then the N scale was made up of small and then one O scale guy. So the good news is with HO being as big as it is, you have a much larger palette to choose from. And we're going to be busy here at Athearn trying to fill all those voids. All right. Well, we got time to do, let's say, one more question here. And I thought I had saw one here. Oh. No, maybe not. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and clear this one out. Nick's wanting to know about those 50th anniversary. I think you'll probably see something. I think Athearn will probably do something. That would be my guess. What do you think, Tony? You think we'll do it?
I hope so, especially with that new Genesis tooling that you got for the P42. That group of there's 6 specially painted Amtrak 50th units. In fact, 100, the one that's in midnight blue, just rolled out of Beech Grove last week. I'm going to have it in Rail News in our first edition of Diesel Era magazine. That we've got a picture of it. So there's going to be 5 P42s and then 1 Simmons Charger will be in that black day 1 scheme. It'll be
day 1 scheme. Yeah.
So yeah, I can't believe we're not going to see lots of models on these. And yeah, hopefully that Athearn Genesis will be in the group.
Yeah, I think that's probably something that you can probably count on. So, but we'll see what happens. Like I said, those guys in development, I don't know if I told you this, Tony, but they've locked me out. I mean, all those guys over there, Janik and Jack and
is it because you bug them? Because I send them emails and I'll say, hey, look at this. This is really cool. Hey, this would be great.
Yeah, I want these, SD90 Mac. Don't we need another SD90 Mac? Give me in the shout outs out there. I mean, what do you guys think of an SD90 Mac? I don't know. I keep, I tell these guys this stuff, and they're like, where do you keep coming up with these ideas? Well, I'm a modeler. I love trains, and all of our fans out here, they love trains too, and they want to see this stuff. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But Tony, I want to thank you for coming on board today, and hopefully tomorrow you have a good Cinco de Mayo.
It is, yes. Wow.
Yeah, Cinco de Mayo. May's a great month. It's getting warm enough for me anyways to go rail fanning. And yeah, definitely. And train fan, to briefly just answer your question, I'm going to say yes. We've got those P42s in Genesis now. I think you'll be seeing more of them than just this last run. That last run, by the way, the ones that are coming out here in June, we sold out. So unless you pre-ordered, you might have a hard time getting that first release of P42s. So keep that in mind. If you still want one and you didn't pre-order, you might want to talk to your dealer now, because they pre-sold pretty quick. It's a popular locomotive. But Tony, thanks for joining us. I can't wait to see what we got coming out next. And I know we've got some stuff that everybody's going to like. Keep an eye out there, folks, for our social media. We've got some great stuff going on. And technically, Kevin, there is a train. It's back there. It's way back there. You might have to squint, but it is there. It's moving slowly.
Did not come up empty. So
we can't blame Tony. Yeah.
There's sort of something, but yeah, the Train Tuesday curse is maybe not completely lifted here, but here it's coming up to us now. It looks like a couple of Jeeps,
Something's creeping up. So there you have it. We had a Train Tuesday, light engines. That's right, Jake here. Everybody out there, I want to thank you all for coming on board and spending some time with myself and Tony today and talking about the great stuff that's going to be available soon at your dealers, as well as what you need to pre-order for next year. And just like always, for me, stuck right here in the middle of the country, I want to wish you all a happy and be safe and do some great modeling this coming weekend. And like I always say, Tony, high greens. How about you?
High greens. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jim. Have a great week, everybody.
All right, everybody. And may the 4th be with you.